Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete what could end up being a rather eventful episode of our Extreme Desert Challenge, because it is time to finally upgrade that storage room so we have a good amount of building planned. Now, last time we left off after becoming allies with the Empire, we also promptly ordered a trade caravan from them, so that one should hopefully arrive in the next few days. To get us started today, we are doing some deconstruction first, and that also already reveals it. Our storage area is going to occupy the southeastern corner of the base, just to the right of our hydroponics farm. Now, in the comments of the last episode, a lot of you suggested repurposing our killbox for this, and I actually like that idea a lot, at least in theory. The only issue, however, is that most of our killbox is actually made of soft sand, and we saw last time how long it takes to get rid of that. And since we desperately need new storage space right now, this was the next best thing. For now, I have put down the plans for a 14 by 14 storage room. Then I have planned to construct a 5 by 14 workshop to the right of that, which theoretically leaves us with enough space to construct a second 14 by 14 storage room next to that. The 14 by 14 size, by the way, was chosen partially because it fits very well into the existing base design, but also because we can cover the entire area with just 2 trade beacons, which we definitely want to have here. As you can see, we are also shrinking the bedrooms of Troy and Edmo from 5 by 5 down to 4 by 5. That is still large enough for them not to become unhappy, but it also allows us to construct a corridor in the middle, which I think is very much necessary, as we should have plenty of pathways both in and out of the storage room. And, well, because we also have plenty of construction workers, that job is completed rather quickly, and we can now begin shrinking the bedrooms of Pollyanna and Alistair. We want to keep things fair after all, and this also creates another convenient pathway into our workshop. On the next morning then, it is time to slightly redecorate our throne room corridor, as the wall that the throne has been standing against will have to get removed as well. In the future, this will allow us to create 2 additional bedrooms here. The throne room itself, meanwhile, will likely move into that monument that we built for Red Hawk. I would like to make a few slight adjustments to that beforehand though, which we are unfortunately not allowed to do for a few more days. As we then start the rather tedious project of putting down marble tiles everywhere, we have a small trade caravan arrive. And yes, I know the tiles do not give us a beauty bonus, but again, I would like to keep the look of the base consistent. The traders, meanwhile, will receive a decent amount of goods from us. We are clearing out some drugs, some unused weaponry, and some excess medicine and cloth. And in exchange, we are purchasing a heavy SMG of excellent quality, which in terms of raw damage per second might now actually be the best gun we currently have. And for those close to mid-range encounters in our killbox, it should prove to be very, very useful. Now, like I said, getting all those marble tiles in place is a rather tedious process. We basically have the stonecutter's table working non-stop at the moment, but then again, if you want to do things properly, you do have to invest a bit of time and resources. In the late afternoon then, the requested Imperial trade caravan arrives, which means it is now high time for Troy to produce as much flake as possible. After all, that is the steakhouse's #1 export, and I anticipate our allies to carry at least a few valuable items. Before we can inspect their stock, however, we have another slight issue to take care of, because as the clock strikes midnight, the steakhouse is once again getting besieged. Now, it hasn't been too long since we dealt with the last siege, but this time we potentially have some friends to help us out. In any case, we want to deal with this as swiftly as possible, ideally before the first mortar shell hits our base. Now, priority number 1 is to actually close off our base at this point. Otherwise, if the enemies attack, which is what we eventually want them to do, they could run straight inside. While we take care of that, we also have Red Hawk man the mortar, Jake and Edmo get into combat gear, and Steak rushes over to the trade caravan. Because of his title, he is the only one allowed to trade with them, and perhaps they have something for sale that could help us out here. And while we can't buy an anti-grain warhead or a doomsday rocket launcher, which would solve this problem quickly, we can still sell our flake for more advanced components as well as a charge lance. We could actually buy 3 of them, but I think 1 will be enough. This is, after all, the weapon with the highest damage per shot in the entire game, at least if we don't count things like the doomsday rocket launcher, for example. It also has a pretty decent range of 30 tiles, which is why we should hopefully be able to use it to snipe off an enemy from afar and cause the enemies to abandon their siege and attack the base directly. Those enemies, meanwhile, have indeed begun setting up camp, and with Red Hawk busy hauling back trade goods, Troy has taken over the mortar. The first shot, though, unfortunately misses, but a heavily armored Jake has picked up the charge lance and is now approaching the enemy position. And well, that was easy. Just 1 hit and our enemies are switching their approach. High time for Jake to get back behind our walls and for Alistair to actually finish constructing those. And because that is not enough chaos already, we also have a quest pop up now. The proposal here is to put all males of the steakhouse under psychic suppression for 5 days, which would reduce everyone's consciousness for that time period, and as a result, drastically decrease the steakhouse's productivity. And personally, I don't think that any of the rewards here are making up for that, so it is somewhat safe to say that we are letting this quest expire. While our enemies are approaching, Alistair also quickly builds a stone pillar for cover here, and luckily he finishes just in time, so the fight can now begin. On the front line for the steakhouse, we have Steak, Jake, Pollyanna and Admo, while our friends from the Empire are a little slow to engage the enemy. Unfortunately for them, their dromedaries are actually the ones meeting the gunfire first, and with predictable results. Still, overall, our combined forces seem to have the upper hand, but once again the fight is interrupted before its conclusion, this time by a trade ship. Now that ship will stick around for a while, so we can focus on the fight at hand, and again, as you can see, we are winning this one, slowly but steadily. Our 4 combatants are strategically staying in the back though, and let the Imperial troops do the heavy lifting, which they actually succeed at, in large parts also due to their superior equipment. Of course, even that does not protect them from suffering a few losses, most of which won't be of much use for us because of bio-coated weapons and death acidifiers, but that dromedary over here, yes, that looks like we may have hit the jackpot. And after a few more moments of rather lopsided combat, our enemies are then in fact retreating, and so is the Imperial caravan as well, so I guess we now need to take care of their leftovers. First of all though, while we are taking some prisoners here, we can see what that trade ship has to offer, and well, yes, we are purchasing a doomsday rocket launcher. We have plenty of silver at the moment, with more coming in from that dromedary corpse, and the rocket launcher is a fantastic weapon to make short work of situations like the one we just faced, so even though it might look expensive now, I have a feeling that at some point down the line we will be very glad we bought it. A closer look at the dead dromedary also shows a few more valuables, apart from a good amount of silver. The highlights include a tech print, 2 neurocalculators, some mortar shells and 2 suits of prestige marine armor. All in all, a fantastic and definitely very lucky haul for us. Speaking of hauling though, we are currently in the process of carrying some prisoners back to the base, so that both Red Hawk and Pollyanna can gain some medical experience, and also for 1 or 2 other experiments down the line. In the meantime, we are of course not forgetting about the abandoned enemy mortar position. As you can see, a good amount of loot can be obtained from here as well, with our focus for now being on the mortar shells, the meals and the components. Back in the base, our prisoners will now get stripped and one of them is also ready to be released again, so let's get her out of here. Our focus is much more on the other 2 that still remain. At this point, we have also hauled back some of the more valuable goodies from the battlefield, and the trade ship is still in orbit, so let's sell those 2 neurocalculators. Our resident researcher Troy already has one installed, so I don't think we need any more of them. For the next few hours, our colonists are then busy cleaning up around the base. Our new storage area is also already seeing some use, although it is of course far from finished. At this point, Troy can also use the tech print to unlock the secrets of jump packs for research, quite a useful technology that we might look deeper into soon. For now though, the only thing that we are looking deeper into are our two prisoners. Brown on the left here will be the involuntary donor of a lung to cure Pollyanna's asthma, and his companion Trask on the right will give the other lung, as well as the bionic heart that is installed on her. Yes, I know, just in the last episode I decided not to go this far with our prisoner, but today our enemies attacked not only us, but our friends from the Empire as well. They also actually caused some casualties and killed one of the animals. And well, the steakhouse knows how that kind of loss feels, so consider this retribution. Not to mention that we are doing all of this with a purpose and not only for the sake of cruelty. All the organs harvested here will actively make our colonists better. And still, another thunderstorm flashing during the procedure creates an eerie atmosphere as Red Hawk and Pollyanna are going to work. Eventually though, all operations are a success, at least from our perspective. Removing the heart did of course kill our patient Trask. Luckily, her companion Brown is still sedated and likely didn't notice. For the rest of the evening, we will now continue our construction work, and while that is going on, we have cargo pods coming in. Actually, a pretty rare occurrence in this playthrough. This time they only contain steel, but of course we always have a use for that. You may have also noticed that two of our enemies actually fell to our kill box. I honestly didn't notice that during the fight, but in the end it looks like our turrets did a good job against them. Later that night then, our prisoner Brown gets released, with one lung missing. As he makes it off the map, the body of Trask is being burned, but the hospital is still occupied, as Pollyanna is now awaiting the installment of 2 new lungs. To fully cure her asthma, Red Hawk will have to replace both her left and her right lung. Luckily, we have all the necessary items available, so let's see how this goes. Alright, here we go, halfway done, no complications so far. And there we are. Pollyanna has just received a fresh new set of lungs. That means her asthma has been taken care of for good now, and as soon as the anesthetic wears off, she should be feeling better than ever before. Now at this point, with it about to expire, I just quickly want to mention that we are not going to take the Danger Cluster quest. This one simply seems a bit too unpredictable for my taste. We would be facing several mag capsules, assemblers and a drop beacon, and there is absolutely no way of knowing what those would unleash upon us. And considering that the rewards are good but not fantastic, I think it's safer to skip this one. A few hours later then, our cautiousness is rewarded with a Psychic Soothe. This one only affects males, so Steak, Admo, Troy, Jake and Alistair will be a tiny bit happier for the time being. And with that, work around the base continues, and that includes research as well. And so, Troy has just unlocked bionic replacements. That means we can now manufacture bionic replacements like that bionic heart we just harvested, although things like bionic legs and arms are arguably a bit more useful. In any case, we are now ready for the next project, and we are going back a bit more towards the basics for this one, because up next on our list are automatic doors. In my opinion, this is really nothing essential that we desperately need, but it should increase the quality of life around the steakhouse nonetheless. Now, for the rest of the day, the colony remains busy getting back to our usual schedule. In the evening then, Steak finds some plasteel with the ground-penetrating scanner. And yes, we will be using a deep drill sooner or later. I actually have that on my to-do list for quite a few episodes now. So far though, there never really was much of a need for it. On the next morning then, work on the base expansion continues. At the moment we do have a bit of a marble bottleneck, but Admo and our hauling animals are doing all that they can. And so, while the new parts of the base are slowly taking shape, we can now also overhaul those that have existed for a little while longer, starting with our old storage room. 3 shelves as well as the butcher table will now move in here. The shelves will be used to store hay grass and the butcher table to turn that into kibble. All of that a little closer to the freezer for easier access, and also because we want to use that old butcher room for something else in the future. In the evening then, the research of auto doors has been completed, but we are likely not going to install any of them in this episode. Our construction workers are still busy with the new storage room and workshop area, and I don't want to have them working on too many projects at the same time. Speaking of which, our throne room is now actually finished for the time being. Like I said earlier, eventually we will have the room to build a few more bedrooms down here, but for now we'll leave this as a nice open area. In case you have been wondering though, yes, both the workshop as well as the entire storage room will get that marble flooring as well, so we are waiting for plenty more stone blocks to be chopped here. In the end though, I do not only want this base to be practical, but to also have it look a little pretty. Before the day can end then, we have another quest pop up, but I would say that this one is an easy no. No, we are not taking on the combined forces of 80 hostile tribespeople. Yes, we probably have much better equipment, but with that kind of numbers advantage, I'm really not sure how much that is worth. During the night then, Labrador Noosa once again gives birth, but as usual we are looking to sell the puppy. On the next morning then, the Psychic Soothe comes to an end, and we can also start our next research project, IEDs. Considering that the game apparently thinks that 80-person raids should be adequate at this point, I think it might be worthwhile to invest in some additional defenses, and especially against tribespeople, a few explosives on the ground should do a good job. At least for the next few hours then, the day remains fairly uneventful, until in the early afternoon, Pollyanna suffers a mental break. It looks like she has been insulted one too many times, it doesn't say here by whom, but a good guess could be Jake, who is unfortunately next in line with another mental break, and instead of hiding in his room like Pollyanna, he is going on an insulting spree. This will of course bring down the mood of everyone he encounters, so let's hope he doesn't cause too much of a chain reaction, or that he actually triggers something worse and gets into a fight with someone. Now, we want to keep in mind here that Edmo is still sporting that hand talon, and he has done some good work with that against previous opponents. Luckily for Jake though, the fight ends pretty much as soon as it begins, with Jake only suffering a minor bite wound, so Edmo is certainly employing some mean tactics. With the sun then setting on another day, we can see that our flooring project is making good progress, although it will likely take us a few more days until the whole thing is completed. On the next morning then, with Pollyanna's mental break subsided and another thunderstorm striking the desert, work around the base continues in Jake's room with the construction of another shelf. I think it might be a good idea to give every colonist their own personal combat equipment. For Jake, for example, that would include the cataphract helmet and the marine armor. And to clear some storage space and to also decentralize the whole thing, it might make some sense to store those items inside of the colonists' personal rooms. That is, however, just a small side project. For the moment, our haulers and construction workers are mostly busy elsewhere. Troy, meanwhile, rather quickly completes the research of IEDs, but just like with the auto doors, we will likely not construct any of them just yet. And even though he does not have any more research to attend to at the moment, Troy can make himself useful, as I think he will now take over cooking duties from Edmo. With minor passion in the skill, he should be able to advance moderately fast. Edmo himself, meanwhile, does not have that, although his skill level is of course a bit higher, but we require his services in so many other areas around the base that I think Troy can take over this one. And that is really one of the more eventful things that happen here today. Later in the evening then, we can see that our tailoring bench as well as a tool cabinet have already found a new home in the workshop. Many more facilities will of course follow, but for the moment it is time to get some rest. In the middle of the night then, we encounter yet another quest, and I think this might be one that we are going to take. Defending a crashed Imperial shuttle is something that we have already successfully pulled off once, and once again we can enlist the help of 4 friendly troopers. Not to mention that we might have something to make up for, considering how the Empire's last encounter with the steakhouse went. So, as we move our biofuel refinery into what was previously our butcher shop, I think we'll end today's episode on a bit of a cliffhanger. Lots of things around the base here are still in a bit of an unfinished state, but then again we also saw quite a bit of action at the beginning of the video, and it looks like that order of events is going to repeat itself in the next one. Now, to wrap things up, we also have more fan art to show off, this time from the lovely Tony Murchison. The image here shows Jake and Alistair and their very successful encounter with a mech cluster in the last episode, which was quickly defeated thanks to Alistair's mining skills and Jake's careful grenade throws. Let's hope that we can repeat that success in the next combat encounter, which is apparently right around the corner. For today though, let's make the cut right here. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, then I would of course be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can do so as well, for example by subscribing to stay up to date, by grabbing some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or by checking out and maybe even pledging to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.